Welcome everyone. Happy Wednesday evening. Tonight we have the awesome Paul Barclay on the call with us. Paul is very kindly taking 20-30 minutes out of his day to discuss the success he's had in coming through our program, the 1% Blueprint. My work, Paul's, by all accounts, he's absolutely smashed it, but I want Paul to tell you about his journey and what he's done. Before we get into that, Paul, just want to introduce yourself, what you do, who you are, like, a bit about who you are.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. First of all, thanks. I've never been described as awesome before, so I'm going to take that one. I'm age-wise, I'm 53 now. So as you gently pointed out to me, one of your more elderly candidates. But it's reality, right? So I think it's a good mix-up. Professional job. So work in finance. Desk-bound. I think the important bit is to go desk-bound in front of a computer a lot of the time. Quite a senior role, so spend a lot of hours working, dedicated to the job. Family-wise, 2 kids, sort of in the 13-10 bracket at school, as well as some older grown-up kids. But the energy I have to put into is with the younger ones. So family responsibilities and all that kind of stuff.
Cool, awesome. Well, thanks for that. So we're here to talk about like your journey through the program that we've just come through, and the experiences in the going through the process. But I think a good sort of jumping off point is, so we're here 12-13 weeks after you having started this process.
Yeah.
What was going on to make you want to reach out and us have a chat? Because often when I speak to guys, they're maybe not feeling the best, they're maybe a little bit overweight, and sometimes a lot of the guys, not saying this is necessarily exactly you, Paul, but a little bit lost with where they're at with their own physical and mental well-being. Where were you on that spectrum, and what was your catalyst for going, right, I need to do something? What was going on, basically?
Yeah, good question. I think over the years, I've seesawed a bit around food and exercise. So in a bit of a cycle where I'd work really hard on one for a while and then fall off the wagon, whether it be exercise or whether it be sort of food. So that's a sort of background to the not quite yo-yoing's a bit strong, but it was a bit like that, a bit cyclical. I think over the course of the great lockdown, where I've been working from home, where I'm typically used to an office job. For when I got to about last September, therefore, what we're nearly 18 months or so working from home. And in that time, nice and easy, wear baggy t-shirts and, don't have to dress up quite as smart for me. So my eating had lapsed quite a lot. I'd also do a lot of work during the day and then sort of think, I just want, a glass of wine in the evening. So I was just getting to the point where I was feeling a bit more uncomfortable about my weight again. And I kind of been through that cycle before of either focusing on food and just thinking about calories and how do I eat more healthily, excuse me, and or focusing on exercise. And I tried to do some cardio stuff before. I'd done a lot of weight training before and constantly injured myself. But each time that was a focus with a sort of, I had a focus with a goal in mind. So it might be an event I want to lose weight for, or I'm feeling a bit old, so I feel like I want to shape up a little bit around the exercise side. And that just never worked because it was always a cycle and always kind of fell off that wagon. So I just wanted to do something that was a bit more permanent. But I think when I contacted you and reached out and contacted you kind of beginning of November, I think it was. So I was in the point where I wanted to do something. And if I'm honest, I realized I didn't know how. It was as simple as that, right? I tried all let's put it, the obvious things, looked at what PTs do, looked at what dietitians do, but wasn't really sure how to make any change. So, and I saw a couple of, I think it was videos or posts from yourself, and thought, okay, this guy's got a slightly different dimension. So I was quite interested, and that's what caused me to reach out.
Okay. I think that gives us a good picture of where you're at. And I think, like, on the spectrum, we talk about this. Some of the gents I speak to are like some of them not in a great way mentally, like, and actually probably in a I guess a tougher, darker place than you might be. On the face of it, they might be gaming it, but actually they're not in a great way. I think you weren't at that point, but I think it was more that, like, I don't want to put words in your mouth or that these words are wrong, Paul, but I was said to it's like, I'm all right, but like you're saying, 53, I'm better than this. I can achieve more than this. And I feel like I'm just not sure. Like, I'm going through the motions with stuff and like work's good, but where I'm at physically and mentally, I know I can achieve more. And it was more about, well, like, how do I get the most out of it? But I just don't know what to do. That was the sort of sense I got. Is that fair?
Yeah. I'd describe it as a bit of a sense of lethargy, really. A bit of a sense of lethargy, being a bit direct. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's right. And I think, I'll address the age thing as well, because I kind of think it's important because you go through different stages of life, and I'm probably at that stage where I'm at the end of my career life, right, or coming to that end. I'm in the decade or 15 years away from the end of a career, perhaps, and you have to recognise that your physicality changes, and it's like, well, kind of, where am I now? And I didn't really know. So I didn't really know. Yeah, I want to be fitter, or I sort of want to lose weight, but how do I do that? What's the motivation and the drivers in life? And combine that with, I think, a desire to get a better balance. That was the main thing missing. I didn't know it. I don't think I knew that when, in fact, I'll be certain, I didn't know that when I spoke to you. You might have detected that when we had our initial chat, because that initial chat's really good at drawing out the sort of subliminal pieces and the pieces you don't know, because it's more of a coaching session, really. But yeah, being a bit directionless and lacking in balance is probably where I was.
Okay. So let's jump forward as to where we are today, like what we've achieved, where we're at, and then I think it'd be helpful to then sort of just talk about maybe some of your key learnings and takeaways from the process that helped you get to this point. So let's, if you want to give a few headlines of where you're at physically, like mentally, and just paint a bit of a picture of what you feel like you've achieved and where you're at right now from that, I guess, disempowered, a bit sort of, directionless place.
Yeah, and I think the obvious one that everyone always asks about is weight, right? So I'm going to kick off with the weight bit and go, yeah, I've lost some weight. I lost about 8 kilos and gone down a clothing size. So that was great. But for me, the better place I'm in is one of a number of things, words I'd use to describe it. Balance is one. Having some routine in life and having some disciplines around those routines as well. And I don't want to make out it's boot camp, because it's not a boot camp. But there is a sense of purpose, discipline, routine, and that becomes self-fulfilling because it gives you something to aim for. I feel I've got something to aim for every day, whether that be small achievements and incremental achievements, almost like targets in the day, or whether it's about just achieving going through a routine. And there's a number of different elements to that, and maybe I don't do them all every day, but what I do is the ones that are appropriate and right for the day and the situation I'm in. And why that's worked for me so well is because I think there are many methodologies around to address any challenge in life, and they all tend to focus on, you must stick to this plan, and this is the plan, and you've got to be 100% on it all the time. The reality is, if you're a guy in a responsible position with a responsible role, you've got a family, you've got all sorts of commitments, and you need to take your own well-being into account. You haven't always got the luxury of being able to run every day the way you want it to do. The schedule doesn't work like that, and you need to learn how to flex up and down, in and out and around, and that's what it's really brought to me. So overall, I'd say a sense of balance, but within that, this ability to tune as I go, and therefore not to slavishly do something fully.
And I think something you said there about the balance, from the way I see it, and I think we've discussed this, Paul, is that you talked about the discipline and the disciplines in certain areas, and that, like we said, definitely not about being a drill sergeant, but in having discipline and taking ownership for yourself. For me, that's what creates that balance. I think we think to have balance, you need some crazy funky hack for work and a crazy funky hack for life or at home, and it's not about that. It's actually like saying, well, I need to focus on my well-being and make sure that I'm taking care of myself. And have some discipline for myself and some structure and some ownership, but that then gives the balance that we need. But I think we don't see it like that,
Yeah, and I'd pick up on the word you used there of ownership, because to me, the third, if I look at the kind of the legs of the program, of the blueprint, and yes, we look at nutrition and food. Yes, we look at exercise, but the key piece is the mindset piece, and that's the piece that actually glues it all together and helped me make a success of it. And I think that ownership, the word that you pull out, then starts leaking into every behaviour you have. You can't help it. It becomes something that uses osmosis, and he's tried to say osmotically and failed. But osmotically gets into everything you look at and do, and you become subconsciously taking that ownership before you've even got to an event that maybe normally would have derailed you. You see it coming, you work out what you're going to do, and you say, for example, you might say, we're going out the beers on Friday night. Now I've got a choice. I can either not go, I can go and not drink any alcohol, I can go and try and drink a small amount of alcohol, which, by the way, never works because I'm either on or off, so I either drink nothing or drink a lot. Or I can go out and get smashed, but recognise I'm going to get smashed, I'm going to feel a bit crap the next day, and then I'm going to need to take some ownership of that decision and not be disappointed when I have a bit of a weight spike for a couple of days, and then I need to work at reducing my calories on other days to counterbalance it. And that sense of owning the decision and not expecting a magical fairy to come along and just make everything all right for me.
Yeah.
But equally, as part of owning it, is then not to let myself get off the rails and get disappointed.
No.
If I go out and drink a lot and then eat a big kebab afterwards, I am going to feel and be heavier for the next couple of days.
Yeah, exactly. It's fun.
Own it, go with it, and then say, but once I'm through that, then what I'm going to do is go back to my normal routines and get back in the normal swing of things.
And for me, what's empowering about that is that you're taking complete control of the situation, right? No one says you can't get pissed, but if you're choosing to get pissed, you're choosing a hangover. That's fine. And then if you're choosing to get pissed, you're probably going to choose to have a kebab. That's also fine. But like in deciding that's what you're going to do, and you know what's going to happen the next day, and you know what your plan is, you've got control there. So you've got self-efficacy, and that actually, even a random example about going out on the piss, that builds your self-esteem. It's like, well, I'm in control of my actions. I'm in control of life. I'm deciding to do that, and I'm deciding what to do afterwards, and I know what's going to happen, and I'm comfortable. It's such a more powerful place to operate from. I'm going to be good and not do anything, and then you do it, and maybe you have a few beers, feel bad, beat yourself up, go a kebab, it's awful. Like, it's just like, no, let's just stop all that and take control. And I think you, like a prime example of someone who's absolutely sort of taken that, like, you know, with full gusto, I think, during the process. Yeah,
and I think previously what I would have tended to do was, if I went out and went through that session on a Friday night, I'd then get the I'm going to be blunt, I then get the fuck it mentality and go on Saturday morning, go, well, I've already blown the weekend now, so I might as well eat and drink for the whole weekend. And then that just leads and that just makes it worse, and you punish yourself for it, and then you reward yourself with something that gives you comfort, which in my case might be food or booze again, and then you perpetuate that cycle rather than just owning it, going, okay, you had a good time, move on now, get back into the routines that you had.
That's it. I think that speaks to something that I talk about a lot, and I think is important. Like, and I said this to you, Paul, and I don't want to touch about some of your experiences in the program and some of the things that you want to take from it. We've touched on it already. Is that, like, if you think, starting a program like I do, or just life in general, like, unfortunately, life isn't unicorns and rainbows. Shit happens. Like Christmas, that was in the middle of when we worked together. That's a positive thing. It's a fun thing, right? It's Christmas, but also, like, you can have life events that are unpleasant, or we get locked down, or whatever else. To think that life isn't going to deal that to you during a period like we went through is absolute bullshit. So the way I see it is, everything we do, it should be able to be testable, and you should be able to roll with it. It should be able to take control. Or actually realize, okay, well, that fell over. I got really sick, so I couldn't work out. Okay, is that your fault? No. So what do we do in that situation? How do we roll with it? Like, I know when we were in the program, a few of the guys got COVID. Like, well, that's rubbish. Well, what can you do given that scenario? Well, I can't go out and I can't do this. Well, what can I do? And for me, that's again, you're in control of the situation. There's certain things are out of control. As soon as you can get the front foot, I think that's it. So with that sort of thought and context, if we roll back to then your start and then journey through the program, what would you say, if you're going to, I mean, it doesn't have to be 3, but like, let's say 2 or 3 sort of key takeaways or learnings that you've taken from the process, or the highlights, I would say.
Yeah, okay. So I think the first one clearly is this piece around ownership. So, but we've already discussed that. I think balance, and trying to balance multiple. I mean, you use or we use together the sort of the analogy of the mixing desk.
Yeah.
And I think that to me is one of the key pieces that works quite well with the word balance. What the program's taught me is it's not all about one siloed piece of work or one siloed part. It's actually within the blueprint itself, within the approach that we went through, it's balancing these different elements of food and nutrition, of exercise, of mindset. Within each of those, then there are a whole group of different elements within each of those. And actually balancing them and realizing that some aren't as effective for me as other ones are. Some don't fit quite as well with me as other ones are. And an example of that one would be, as I discussed with you, some of the injuries I've had in the past stopped me or hurt me with some of the exercises you wanted to do. I never saw myself as being a guy who did yoga, but what I did was switch from the weight training stuff into doing yoga, which I never thought I'd do. But the benefit, ironically, is that I went from my initial view of, I want to bulk up and be muscly and I need to do some weights, to I'm doing something that's increasing my flexibility, reducing my proneness to injury, and I enjoy doing. And I do actually find, because I'm relatively unfit, I found out that doing yoga actually improved my fitness as well. You know, so
That's a huge mindset shift. When that happened, that was about halfway through, wasn't it? And you were like, because you're like, oh, look, I'm trying to do this. I said, well, look, you don't need to do that. Like, what's going to, principles, not rules, what's going to be, get you the most benefit for you? And you're like, well, actually, I was thinking about doing some yoga. And I was like, well, that sounds ideal for where you're at.
Yeah.
And almost like letting go of the ego part of this. I've got to be smashing the weights and X, Y, and Z. And actually, for me, I remember the conversation when we talked on one of the calls, like it was quite liberating. You're like, oh, great. And then afterwards, you're like, that feels awesome, you know? So,
yeah. And I you know, and that's rewarded me in bucket loads because I actually feel so much better. And it's affected. And the irony with that one is doing something that was a combination of exercise and effectively a mindset piece. I'm not saying it's fully meditative, but it does give me a sense of wellness and awareness of self. That's actually given me a mental balance as well and a well-being balance as well as exercise. But and I think the third one really is that you called out there is this thing about effectively principles, not rules. And you kind of want that structure to work to, because otherwise there wouldn't be a blueprint, you wouldn't have a methodology, right? But within that, you want to flex that according to it. You know, don't go over the top when you haven't done something because something prevented you doing it on that day. You know, just follow it in principle. If you can find alternative exercise to the one that you're recommending or you thought about, then we switch that. You know, you can have flex in all these things. And the key bit for that for me was it was about when you don't achieve something that we've discussed as part of the program, that doesn't mean I have to berate myself, punish myself, feel guilty, and then drop off, drop out of that cycle again. And it was like, okay, move on, find something else that works. And examples would be, if you're ill and you can't quite do the exercise you want to do, then find something that's a bit less intrusive that you can do. And if you're really poorly and you can't do anything other than just sit there for a day, all right, don't feel guilty. And then as you feel better again, then get back in the habit of doing something. And I think that's the third learning form.
Yeah, that something's better than nothing. But in some cases, if you're proper sick, nothing, nothing is the best thing to do, right? And it's not feeling guilty about it.
But you also said about the perfect not being the enemy of the good, right?
Yeah.
Or good enough. And I think that's the other thing, that we're surrounded in social media and with pressures and with advertising from people offering great solutions, that you need to be perfect and you need to be this perfect gym physique, or you need to look in this perfect way, or you need to do this many reps of this many weights of this exercise and to achieve that number.
Eat this much kale in this many grams in this perfect way.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then if you don't hit that perfection level, you punish yourself for not being perfect enough. Well, you can do, depending on your mental state, right? So I think that bit about doing good enough that works for you in your situation, in my case, for my age, but for anybody, who might be working long hours or working shifts, who finds it more difficult, just find something that fits in and don't let perfection derail you. Yeah,
that's another one, the perfectionism thing, I think. And this speaks to a lot of the guys that I work with. I think you said you related to this, and myself, is that procrastination. We say we're procrastinating, but actually it's just perfectionism in a mask. And I think that's because it's like, well, I can't do that well. And that could have been a scenario with yourself with the gym stuff. It's like, well, actually, I should be smashing the gym down and I can't do that. So you go, oh, well, I can't do anything. What's the point? It was actually the mindset shift is, hold up a second, maybe doing some yoga would be better for me and I'll feel better for it. And lo and behold, you do. And so it's like allowing that to sort of pass. And actually, whenever we're in the perfectionism mindset, often, that's not to say you don't want to do things right and be really good at something. It's nuanced. Yeah. But that, if it's not absolutely ideal and exactly what I think I ought to be doing, then everything's gone pear-shaped. Then everything does tend to go pear-shaped,
Yeah, absolutely. And I think especially if you're in and I know a lot of people that are on the program that I've met, a lot of the guys I've met, and that camaraderie, by the way, is just fantastic because it motivates you. And we all said it motivated us to have that. But a lot of the guys are in professional jobs, senior roles where they're under a lot of pressure, and almost by definition, people who've achieved that much in their working life and in their business life do strive for a level of maybe not perfectionism, but high levels of achievement. Yeah. And within that, there is an element of trying to always be better and to make perfect. So moving that away from that demand on yourself personally to be perfect all the time and putting that into a real world dynamic that goes, but when you're talking about yourself as a person, you're not a robot. You're not a computer. You are a real person, and you've got to keep things in balance. For me, that moving away from that perfectionism demand really helped.
Yeah, and so So following on from that, like going through the process, and it's kind of dovetails. It's a similar question that I've already asked you, but it's slightly different. But I'd be interested to see what you say. It like having gone through the process, maybe some of the practical or mindset stuff or whatever. Like, what if anything was like the most surprising? Like, what's this about? And then like actually what you got from it. You know, if there's anything like that, or anything that you got from the program at the end of it and gone, I wasn't expecting that. Like, is there anything like that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Oh, you should have primed me on that one. Yeah, I'm just going to give that balanced thought. So I think that from a food and exercise, okay, what surprised me? First of all, the way that you've built the blueprint is it's quite incremental, but yet it's challenging. So there's not too much in any given week. What you don't do is hit a wall where you think, oh, sod this, I can't do this, I can't face it. But equally, there's enough, and you have enough achievement points where you can feel satisfied that you've achieved something, and you have that progression tracking and that achievement tracking, so you feel you've got progress, you've got achievements, but you don't get faced with such a steep cliff to climb that you can't make it. So that surprised me, because it was a incremental flight path rather than being a
sort of stuff. And I think that's something we touched on when we spoke, which when you finished, Paul, and you mentioned, and it's something, since you said it, I've heard other guys in the program say it, and it's just something that's resonated, is that pushing your comfort zone a bit. And I think that process, it's not like you'd say, well, I'm going to tell you, I was just putting words in your mouth there. I don't believe it's like hard or super challenging. But when you say pushing your comfort zone, I think what you said at the start about that being slightly in inertia or languishing a bit, like actually as guys, I don't think that feels great, especially if you're quite driven. And so if you've got things that you're working towards and achieving them, like that feels good. And I think to be challenged in the right way, and it's not to say to have loads of shit just coming at you constantly, because that doesn't feel good either. But like to be constantly achieving and doing something, and some of the things are like, oh, that's a bit spicy, or that's a bit different. But then you do it and you complete it, that feels really good, and it builds.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think like having that your comfort zone prodded, I think is a good thing.
Yeah, and I think that given the kind of guys that you get on the program, all responds to by nature being a bit prodded and almost sort of, come on, you can do this, right? Take some ownership, and it fits in. And I think you look at something like, all I'm asking you to do, guys, at the beginning is do 5 minutes of exercise, either do A, B, or C, and do 5 minutes of exercise today or every day when you get up. And I start thinking, crap, well, I only just get up in enough time to, make a cup of coffee and stagger into the home office. Now, all right, okay, 5 minutes, all right. But then you do it for a week and you kind of go, okay, when, the first day actually I felt pretty bad because I don't normally do exercise in the morning, but you get used to it. And then there's a little bit more and a little bit more, but it never becomes excessive. And what you do is you build up that fantastic daily structure. I'm going to actually move away from where I said routine. It's more of a structure that you can fit into your own world, and then gives you a sense of achievement every day. Every day you feel that you're achieving something and getting through. So even if the rest of your work life goes to shit, every day you've achieved something personally, and you can go, I think, yeah, I did something good today, I achieved it.
For me, that's like that, and it's something I've got more of a routine. That's what we build up in the program, or a routine and a structure. I think it's so powerful because, like, if you can start your day, or in your day you've got something set up where you're looking after yourself, you're achieving some things that are outside of anything else apart from your own control. That is so good for your self-esteem, your self-efficacy, and just your self-worth, your confidence. And if those things also so happen to make you look and feel better, just because they are those things, it doesn't have to just be exercise, there's mindset stuff as well as physical stuff. Like, I think that's so important, and maybe starting and dovetailing your day like that to help you feel it up. Because yeah, like we said, life ain't always unicorns and rainbows, and you can have a shit show every day or a week. Like, my kids have had some sickness bug for the last 5 days. It's been carnage at home. But I've still got my standards that I adhere to, and I've got my structure and my routine. This is about you, not me, but as an example, and that keeps me sane. It keeps me fit and healthy, and I've achieved stuff, even if everything's a bit of a mire, like it's
yeah, absolutely. And I think so. And I think the ownership piece, and something else I learned, was actually being strong enough to, I'm going to say, stand up for myself. I maybe that's not quite the right words, but we talked about the importance of having some time for yourself and maybe breaking the day up. And I was talking about the fact that I'd just sit at a desk and look at a screen like this, and it just, for any of the guys out there or anyone who's watching this and they're desk bound, it really, that next meeting, that next Zoom call, it just goes back to back. And before you've done it, you've been sitting there for 8 or 9 hours, and you know what you're doing. And being brave enough is an odd word, but I'm still going to use it to say to my boss, who might be watching this for all I know, as it's on LinkedIn, but to say, I need a break in the middle of the day. You know, I need to get up, I need to go out for a walk. You know, it gets the blood moving, it freshens me up for the afternoon. I need to do that every day, and taking time out, scheduling time out every day. And I was the guy who said, I can't do this. Every day a meeting creeps in, I can't do it, until I was strong enough to say that scheduled as time out in my calendar every day, and then stuck to it. Now, have I done it 100%? No, because going back to that thing about principles, not rules.
Exactly.
One day in 10, it doesn't happen, I'd say on average. Maybe 2 days in 10, it doesn't happen. But I'll tell you what, I go out and I get that break and that walk, whether it's at 11 a.m., 12:30 lunchtime, 3 in the afternoon, or I don't do it until 8 o'clock at night. But I will go out and do that at some point, because I know I need to do it. And I know that when I come back, I feel fantastic for it.
And that's about setting those boundaries, personal boundaries for yourself and at work. And sometimes, again, like you said, it is brave. It can be scary, because if you're driven and you want to succeed, so, well, surely you should be working all the time, and any thought of spending any time outside of that is wrong. But the converse actually is, you do that, you set that, quite quickly people respect that. Quite quickly you realise it's not going anything aside from make you feel better, and actually you come back refreshed and you're able to operate better. So that extra half an hour you sat at your desk just mindlessly doing, or maybe not mindlessly doing stuff, you think that's beneficial. It comes from a well-intentioned place, but actually you'll get so much benefit from stepping out and coming back. And that's one small example of like looking at that bigger picture piece versus just getting focused on the weeds, I think, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And then I think that, and I'm just going to focus on the work bit for a moment, that the other thing that what you did teach me and what you taught the whole group about was about what you eat and how that can impact sort of from a blood sugar and an energy level as well. So now what I find is that I can operate at a much sharper level and a better capacity throughout my whole day. I don't get the energy dips. I don't get those sort of carb slumps because I eat better, and because I now try and break the day with fresh air and a different sort of a view of the world by getting outside. That has made me so much more productive over an 8, 9, 10-hour day, whereas before I might be working the hours, but there's bits in there where it just dies off, you know, and I lose motivation and I've lost the energy. So that was one of the other things I learned about using food at the right time.
That's a really important one, because I think if we want to lose weight, often the dieting mentality is, right, I'm just going to cut loads of stuff out, restrict myself and all the rest of it. And for me, it's not what it's about. It's about creating a framework around your life that you can eat and relax and enjoy yourself. That also results in you losing some body fat, because most of the guys I speak to want to change themselves physically as well as the mindset piece, right? But on the flip side, driven, got important jobs, got lots going on. If what you're doing by putting in your mouth is actually making you feel worse or dropping your energy, there's something going on here. But actually, you can set things up in such a way where it does the absolute converse. It gives you more energy, more focus. You're like, how does this work? I'm losing weight, so reducing calories. But I'm actually feeling better and more energized. It's like, you know, I got a magic pill ball. That's not how it works. But equally, there's just sensible, science-backed ways that we can frame things, and all of a sudden you're like, fucking hell, this works quite well. Like, and, you know,
absolutely.
It's
and I think so. The last bit about what I've learned, I suppose, is this whole piece about mindset and reframing things. And I think that's the bit that's changed the most for me. So it's out of the mindset piece that about 6 weeks into the program, I kind of realized that I didn't just want to lose the weight. I wasn't just joining just to lose weight, and that there were I had a different endpoint than I thought I had. So this is where I'd align it more to, and I'm not going to use the horrible word life coaching, because that would give the wrong impression, but I would, in my head, what we've been through is a wellness coaching as well as anything else, that mindset piece. And what that's delivered for me was halfway through reframing everything I wanted. So it's different to where I came into the program, but gave me a much better outcome at the end of the program. And that's where I tended to, maybe for me, slightly away from some of the exercise regimes, because I had to face lack of flexibility, lack of fitness and age, and more towards actually picking up things I never thought I'd do. So I mentioned the yoga. I never thought I'd meditate. I never thought I'd write a journal. I never thought I'd do all these things. And yet I do all these things now on a daily basis and feel a lot better for it. And because I feel better, I want to carry on doing it. It's not a chore. The thing is, it's not a chore. And it fits in my life. And instead of being, oh God, I've got to find an hour to do this exercise, or go and spend an hour in the gym, and it's 20 minutes each way in the car, and I've got to have all of a sudden there's this bit of time in the morning I spend, and a bit of time in the evening, and something I do around lunchtime fits into the world, and it puts me in a better place, a much better place. You know, I don't need to have a glass of wine to relax after work anymore. it became a habit. To relax, I need a glass of wine or a beer. I just don't need it. I just don't need it. It's great.
I think that's epic. And like, obviously, I'm a firm believer in what you're saying there. But I think if you want to make changes to your life, and if the thing that you're doing, that you're changing, is really hard and you hate it and you can't wait for a certain end date for it to stop, there's something going wrong. Like what I want for everyone in the program, and I believe all men and women should have, is a way they can live their lives that, like, the stuff that you're doing is stuff you want to do, and it fits in and feels good, and it makes you feel good, and you want to do more of it because it makes you feel better. Like, well, then it's just a self-fulfilling positive prophecy. Like, whereas actually, maybe when we started, like you said, you're trying this, you're yo-yoing, Paul, but like, we get stuck in those negative feedback loops of trying something, it's not working, I'm shit, I can't, it's too hard. Well, let's just flip the script on that a bit and actually create a positive environment. So what you just described there is for me like the holy grail of where we want to be, right?
Yeah, and you kind of said it at the beginning, or numerous times throughout the program, actually, which is your intent wasn't to provide a crutch and a support structure forever, and neither was it to come in and try and do some quick super bit of change that then will fade off again at the end. So for me, the real benefit is that that the whole blueprint in itself has engendered a change that will be permanent, and it will be, and that's the success. That's what's different to going and seeing a PT who just trained you to do some exercise, or going and seeing a life coach who just talks about your mind position, or going and seeing a nutritionist to just talk about calories. This embodies everything, and you can find the right balance to kind of then take ownership. Ironically, going back to the ownership, take ownership now of my life going forward. So, and that's a great place to be.
Thank you. Okay, Paul, I realise we're coming to time, so thank you so much for your time, and I hope for anyone it's been helpful. Final question. Well, first, is there anything else that you want to say, or any questions that you've got for me, or anything else?
No, and I like the way you always ask that at the end, and you always give everyone the opportunity to ask for that extra help. No, I'm good, thanks.
Cool. So I guess my final question to you would be, like, let's say someone's watching this, they're thinking, oh, maybe I'd like to have I'm interested, or I'm a bit on the fence, I'm not sure what it's about, like, or they're considering joining and picking up the phone or getting in touch to have a call. What would you say to someone who's sort of considering but not sure whether to sort of go, right, let's go for it?
I would say get in contact with you. Fill the form in that you ask people to fill in, because it makes you self-reflect a little bit on what you want to do and have a conversation with you. There's no hard sell. We came out at the end of I'm a cynical sod, right? So I thought, oh, this is just going to be a hard sell. We came out at the end of the conversation that we had, where we both knew that we could work together and deliver a great outcome. And then it wasn't even a decision anymore, because this is what we're going to do. And I think that if anyone else is interested, have that conversation, because you're the kind of guy who'll go, if it doesn't look like it's going to work, we'll say to someone, I don't think this is going to work, or it's not the right time for you, or whatever. And anyone else can equally do the same thing and say, no, it doesn't work for me. You're not going to come under pressure. It's going to be, if it works for you, it works for you.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Paul. That's a ringing endorsement, so thank you very much. On that note, I appreciate your time. Thank you. If anyone's watching, they are keen about having a chat, would like some help, or, as Paul said, get in touch, drop me a DM, put a little note in the comments, and we can have a chat. Other than that, Paul, thank you so much for your time. You are awesome. You are a legend. It's been a pleasure having you. I hope everyone's got something out of watching this. Have an amazing Wednesday, and thank you very much. See you. Cheers, guys.
Bye.